Welcome to Sportsnut Central. We're nuts about sports.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sportsnut Central. This is our first episode here. I'm Andrew Thompson. We got Spencer Tangay. We got kind of the constructor of this pod. Well, it was everybody but Jeaner, Kevin St. Jean. Come on, this is your baby, brother.
It is. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and coming along for the ride with us.
Spencer, you just want to introduce yourself. You've done this a million times.
Sorry, it's exciting, especially when we were talking about this and how we were going to put this together. But for it to come together and a big announcement coming from the NHL, it just gets everyone's blood boiling rather, and everyone fired up. So I'm excited for everything that's going to come about in this podcast and what we're going to talk about in the next coming episodes.
You got it, man. And we're all at home right now in our own locations, but we're still, by the gift of technology, able to record our first podcast. So it's pretty amazing. And the NHL kind of just yesterday gave us a silver platter to start this podcast on by announcing the return to play format. Gary Bettman going on Sportsnet around 4:30 Eastern, talking about in detail how the NHL is going to come back, what the plans are, what the challenges are, what the good things are. So, gentlemen, I'll throw it to you guys first. What are your thoughts on just the NHL deciding to return here?
Well, I can start, and I think the big one that everyone is kind of shocked about is going from a 16-team playoff to a 24-team playoff and scrapping the regular season. I personally think that's the best way to go. It gives a lot more teams that were maybe fighting for a spot a chance at a playoff berth, obviously, and it just puts into perspective how much change this league has come and gone through in the last, say, several years. Back you go 2013 to 2014 when they changed the playoff format and they changed the divisional format with the conferences changing. And now this. It just opens up a lot of questions on what's going to come down the pipe in the next few years and how this plays out. I'm excited to see how 24 teams battle it out for one spot to win the Stanley Cup later, we'll say, in who knows, August or so.
All right, Jeaner, what are your thoughts on the return to play format, and also just to you guys both as well, what the decision means? I mean, in terms of, how it looks in society, like, is it the right time? Is it not? But yeah, Jeaner, just your thoughts on this format.
Yeah, I think Spencer hit the nail on the head there. It's going to really show what's coming down the pipe for future seasons. They may be able to get some stuff out of this format that they want to carry over to future seasons. And with the season going now till August, September, the later start, now they're saying maybe each season they'll start, with the outdoor game on New Year's Day and stuff. So it's really a lot of things to take in for the first time and for the future. And we'll go from there and see what impact it has. As far as timing, I mean, you can't wait forever is the way I see it. Stuff's starting to open up in society and, everyone has their own opinion, I guess. But if you're going to try it, you might as well try it now.
I think there's one big change that a lot of people may not look at and they maybe take for granted, but it's a change that I think will help the game. And it's the first round best 3 out of 5 for the teams trying to get into the top 16 rather than a best 4 to 7. And yes, you can argue there's so many series that could go either way. And you look at, of course, Gina, your St. Louis Blues go from bottom in January all the way to winning the Cup last year. But I think 3 out of 5, just every game means that much more. And if you want to go 4 to 7 in the next rounds, that's a great way to go because everyone loves playoff hockey. But there's no way you take a shift off in a best out of 5 series when you haven't been on the ice in a couple of months.
Oh, it's kind of a perfect storm this was the best situation for every team involved all across the league, even the ones that aren't going to be in the play-in round, right? So
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, like the teams that were essentially out of it, like Chicago, Montreal specifically, they were kind of given this gift, if you will, of the opportunity to have a chance to get into the playoffs again, just given the circumstances. But if you read some of what I read today, I mean, the Canadians specifically, as you all know, I follow them most closely of all teams, but they have a kind of a disadvantage because the more they win, the worse their chances are at the lottery draft and then their draft positioning, and they're kind of in the middle of a retool or which is what Mark Bergevin calls what's happening with them right now. So, there's advantages, disadvantages all across the board. This whole format's not even complete yet, as we heard from the NHLPA yesterday. So it's the round robins, the reseeding after the play-in rounds, and then the subsequent rounds going to the conference final of the Stanley Cup. I mean, there's still some questions to be answered. But in terms of the overall, like if you watched Gary Bettman yesterday, in terms of the overall presentation of this return to play, I mean, it's still phase 1 right now. They're trying to go to phase 2 next week, which means that some players will begin workouts with, a limited amount of guys in the facility. But in terms of like a societal impact, sports always seem to be a healer whenever there's tragedy, whenever there's, like, if you look at 9/11, and obviously this is a different circumstance, but something like that where something so tragic and terrible. But I mean, like, the vibe it presented, the unity it brought at sporting events, baseball, hockey, like everywhere. Just the national anthem meant so much more. Even like when the sports returned, it was like there was a lot of heart behind it. People were, if you notice, people are just a lot kinder nowadays, right? So sports can only be a positive thing if they do it safely. I mean, they're going to mention time and time again, they're not going to do anything unless health and safety is number one. They made that clear time and time again yesterday with Gary Bettman's message, and also NHLPA executive Donald Fear, of course, saying that, because there's different situations for different players, right, guys? I mean, we got Max Domi on the Canes who's got type 1 diabetes. He may not be clear to play. So this situation isn't perfect for everybody, of course. There's a lot of people going through a lot harder things than just missing out on sports like us fans. So there's a lot of things to be considered. But as it's coming back, or trying to, what we do know is that it can have more of a positive than negative effect if health and safety is number one.
I think a big thing to look at is how these teams are going to change the way they operate when they go back, because we all know there's going to be 2 sites rather than, boarding planes, getting back and forth, going to a home and away series, and how this will change the way they go day to day. And like you mentioned, with a guy at Max Domi who has diabetes, or anyone who has sort of aching body injury, how they treat themselves going into this kind of tournament style, we could almost look at with 2 sites going at the same time, and how these teams adapt to all these changes in such little time.
I think another thing too, I was reading an article today about, is with having that many teams with only like in each hub city, you're probably looking at games like early afternoon, mid-afternoon as well. So just how the players can adjust to playing those, constant playoff type games in the afternoon on a Tuesday afternoon. It's going to be a big adjustment for everyone.
Well, it throws them back to minor hockey days where you're playing 3 games a day, grabbing some Olive Garden, all you can eat bread and pasta between games, and then throw into the rink to play the semifinals. And that's why I love this format so much. And I wish, you could see this maybe more down the road. Obviously, maybe not in the 2 hub cities, but this just reminds me of minor hockey tournaments in the glory days. And these players, I think, are going to really enjoy themselves regardless of where they finish and how this plays out.
What are your guys' thoughts on how Gary Bettman and the NHLPA put this thing together? I mean, not everyone's a big fan of Gary Bettman. Personally, I think the guy's done a good job for a long time now. Nobody's going to do a perfect job in any job in this world. But I mean, if anything, I feel like they put their best foot forward trying to get the game back. And, he gets booed every single time the Stanley Cup gets handed out. And a certain part of me is kind of like, I don't fully understand it. I mean, the guy, like, somebody's got to do the job, right? I mean, so I'm impressed with how they handled the return to play format, and they really put their best foot forward, giving us the best possible scenario given this terrible scenario that we're in right now. So what do you guys think?
I think you nailed it right on the head. And Gino and I were talking before we started this. He gets booed more than anyone probably in the industry. Roger Goodell, of course, the NFL, we all saw at the virtual draft getting booed, and he was all for it. But for the amount of work he's put in and the NHLPA coming together, they're the only league that has probably put out the most effort into returning to play. And you know what? Everyone could say they could have just scrapped the season. They could have said, safety first, and safety will always be first. They won't do this unless they get full clearance, of course, but they're the only league that has put this return to play format together for fans to enjoy. You know what? With all the virtual stuff they've done, the league coming together as a whole, the league is in a really good spot considering where it could have been when COVID-19 first came up. But no, they decided to put their work boots on and they put this out, and I give them full credit. And everyone is now really excited and probably in the corner of Gary Bettman, because you don't see an MLB really format out there yet. You don't see an NBA return to play format out there yet. So it's very exciting news to see NHL take the leadership role and just smash this out for everyone to get excited for.
Yeah, you kind of took my point there, Spence. That's what I was thinking too. When you look at everything going on with the MLB right now and the fighting going back and forth, and they're saying, you know what, maybe we just won't have a season. To think of how quick and how fast, I should say, the NHL and the NHLPA got together, hammered out the details, and put their first step forward towards returning to play. I think it says it all about what Bettman did.
Gino, this kind of reminds me, and of for those who don't know, of course, we're all ball hockey people here. Gino, of course, working behind the desk and playing, and Andrew playing as well, and Gino and I reffing some games together. It reminds me of a Thursday night before a tournament, and you get told 4 teams back out, or you have no balls, or something comes up huge. And rather than just saying, you know what, we can't do anything about it, the NHL here stepped up and said, no, this is how we're going to do it, 24 teams. They talked to the teams, talked to the players, talked to the fans even, and got everyone's opinion on how this would look. And now there's pretty much a 24-team bracket that no one can complain on how this might play out. Everyone's opinion was accounted for, and they did a really good job putting it together.
Yeah, they were able to keep as many fans interested in this return to play idea as possible. And I think they succeeded in that. I know some Sabres fans, fans of bottom 7 teams, that are just praying for Alex Lafreniere to change their fortunes in the draft. You can understand that. You can appreciate that. But I think 24 teams being able to return to play is amazing. And just, again, like, there's more people affected in a positive way, hopefully, that because there's so many teams allowed in this format that you can't really see it as a negative.
I will say, if Detroit does not get the number 1 pick, I will feel really bad for them, no matter how this plays out. They had a really rough year, turning into almost a laughing stock of the NHL. But of course, Ottawa has a lot of great picks coming down the chute, and it just reminds me of when the NHL draft lottery comes on the TV every year, and you never know who's going to get it. To see the Detroit Red Wings this year not get it would probably be one of the biggest upsets in the NHL 2021 season, because it's an absolute – I mean, you look at the year they had, it speaks for itself of how bad they were in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's hard to feel that sorry for them when they made the playoffs 22 years in a row.
Correct. That's true.
So I will say that I don't think I'll be that saddened if they don't get it. Honestly, I don't know what it is, but I think it's kind of geographical bias. I would just love to see the Buffalo Sabres get the number 1 pick and see another dynamic duo formed, Lafreniere and Eichel. I mean, Eichel's just on an island over there by himself, and to get a superstar generational player to play with him like Lafreniere would be amazing. But I mean, you just can't count anybody out. I mean, my goodness, the Toronto Maple Leafs, who knows? 6.5% is the percentage of some of these teams if they lose in the first. So who knows, right? So that's what's smart about what the NHL did, because they're keeping fans on both sides of the draft, whether they're in the 2014 playoff or not, interested, right? So they're keeping them interested because, we're going to go into the draft in further detail on another episode, by the way, folks. And we should mention also just briefly here that we do have episode 2 coming your way a day after today, which this will be airing today on Thursday for the first time for our first episode. But episode 2 will feature an interview with Ryan Harrison from the Welland Jackfish. We're going to go into detail about his team and the success of the baseball league that's been formed in Welland, Ontario specifically here, and why they chose Welland and not Niagara, in general, which is really interesting to hear from Ryan. And also just the reasons for this podcast and the direction we're going to be taking all of our listeners into consideration as best we can. And the inspiration from Kevin St. Jean, Jeaner, and Spencer, just hearing about, how this is all coming together, why we're doing it. There's going to be a lot to look forward to in episode 2 as well, just to let you guys know. So keeping it rolling along here, guys, let's get into some predictions about how these series are going to go. We are spoiled right now. We have the opportunity to actually talk about hockey teams and games and how they're going to play out. So if you take a look at the first bracket here that Gina posted recently on social, was the first team in the top left you see is the Leafs and the Columbus Blue Jackets. So who do you guys got and why?
I mean, I'll start. Oh, go ahead, Gina. Go ahead. You're chomping at the bit. You're chomping at the bit at this one.
No, you know what? This is one I would love nothing more than to see Toronto lose again and not even make it out of this, because losing first round every year is fantastic when the Leafs lose. But unfortunately, I got to go with Toronto here in probably 4 games. And then that'll set up, hopefully, a matchup with Boston so Boston can do their thing with them.
And I was going exactly where you took me there, Gina. I was taking Toronto. I don't know in how many games, but I am taking Toronto. I think it's time, they get out of the first round. They do something a little more positive here. And if Toronto does get selected as one of the hub cities, as we all know, they're in one of the, I think they're down to 10 or 12, whatever they left us off at when Gary did his announcement yesterday. What a way to win, considering there would be nobody to cheer for it in the stands. As you can tell, I'm not the biggest Leaf fan, but I think that'd be one way to win, with nobody in the stands if they do knock off Columbus in the first round.
Yeah, by the end of this all, I mean, there are still discussions. It's way too early, but it'll be neat to see at least some fans possibly in the stands for the conference and the cup final.
Right,
but,
right.
Yeah, I mean, Toronto, I mean, none of us are Leaf fans, so but we're honest. And
that's right.
Gina, I got to give him props for, fighting the urge to want to go against them just to go against them. But I don't know, man. I mean, it's so hard. Like just the way the Leafs narrative is going. I mean, I have believed recently in the last few years as they've come together with, drafting Matthews, the Tavares sweepstakes, Marner, Nylander, the talent they got, Freddie finding his game, the defensive end everyone in the world knows needs help. But I'm convinced they have a really, really good chance at making a run and maybe 2 or 3 runs coming up in the next few years. But something is not incomplete about their recent tragic narrative. So I don't know what's going to happen with them. It's a really tough call. I've thought about it, but, oh, man, it almost seems wrong not to pick them. But I will go with Columbus for the upset just to keep it interesting. John Tortorella is a really experienced coach. Columbus got very healthy as well. You got Foligno coming back. You got Seth Jones coming back. There's some reasons to believe that Columbus could have a very good chance in that series, so I will take them for the upset.
And let's not forget, Columbus is also one of the potential hub cities too. So Toronto could be going into Columbus's barn as well. If you look at the list of teams, there's only 3 teams in the East: Columbus, Toronto, and Pittsburgh. And I mean, they were talking today about if the players have to guarantee their mandatory 14-day quarantine, they're probably ruling out all Canadian cities. So that leaves a 50-50 chance of Columbus being a hub city too for the East.
So quick question. If they do play in Columbus, do they fire the cannon? I'm going a hard yes on this one.
There will be one person designated in the arena to shoot that cannon.
That'll be so loud.
As long as they sanitize it after each cannon or after each shot.
Good point. Right. Brought to you by Purell. Good point.
Which, only one person's touching it, so
safe.
Shouldn't be
true.
Too big of a concern. All right, let's roll along to the next series here. Obviously has significance to me, but we'll put the bias aside. So Pittsburgh and Montreal, who you guys got?
Well, I'll start on this one, and I'm going Pittsburgh in a sweep. I'm sorry to say. You know what? I think Pittsburgh deserved a better fate this year. They had a really good season. I can't see Crosby getting eliminated in the first round. I just can't see it happening. I think their offense is much better. But again, it's how do you base your opinions off this when the players haven't been on the ice? They haven't played a game in feels like a dog's age now, whatever week 9 we're on now. But I honestly think Pittsburgh over Montreal in a clean sweep.
I'm not going sweep, but I got to go Pittsburgh 2 and 4. I mean, Carey Price, you hear everyone, Tampa and them denying the system because of guys like Price and Patrick Kane. I don't buy into it. Jake Gensel's coming back healthy. that Pittsburgh team fought injuries all year. I'll give Carey Price 1 game, but that's all. Pens in 4.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's hard to not see Pittsburgh coming out of this one. It's very, very difficult. It's just Montreal's hand wrapped gifted this opportunity to prove themselves, but I mean, they're not there yet. As healthy as they'll be, I think they'll give them a fight. I will say that I think they'll give Pittsburgh a run for their money. So all 2 games. So I think Montreal, if it's a best of 5, that means it's basically game 7. So it's kind of saying a lot. But yeah, you know what? I'll be the optimistic one. I'll say Pittsburgh wins, but I'll say Pittsburgh wins the series 3-2.
Ooh.
So, because we have to remember too, this is a best of 5, right? For as far as we know, so they have to get to 3 wins first, right? I know we're used to 4, but not to be too technical. But anyways, so I'll say that Montreal will somehow squeeze out 2 wins. Which, if I get proven wrong, I won't be that sorry about it. All right, Islanders and Panthers. Who do you guys got?
I love it. This series, it's got ugly series written all over it, but I love it. Because I am one to say right now, I think Florida is going on a run. They had a mediocre season, flipping flopping right by that wild card. Bobrovsky comes back, Coach Q. Florida's going on a run here in the playoffs. And I'm taking Florida, sweep. Sorry, Curtis Person, if you're listening. Islanders swept. Bye-bye.
Wow.
I mean, take.
It's hard to argue your points. I'm going the other way, though. I'm believing hugely here in Barry Trotz and the Islanders, and the goaltending with the Islanders, I think, is going to propel this team past the Florida Panthers. However, Florida is one of the higher scoring teams in the NHL. When they do score, they seem to score in bunches. And the couple of Islander games I've watched, including the one game I went to with Curtis this year, and Curtis will be sure probably talking a little bit more every time we talk about the Islanders. A buddy of mine who's a big Islanders fan. But they played Washington in Long Island. They were up by, I think, 3 or 4. And all of a sudden, the Capitals decided to unleash a guy named Alex Ovechkin, who scored 2 in the third period alone. The Islanders gave up a 4-goal lead in the third. So if they're able to hold off any sort of brain farts like that, giving up 3-4-goal leads, I have the Islanders winning. I have the Islanders over Florida in 5 games.
So you're going to take okay, so that would be, if my math is correct, it'd be 3-2. Yeah, so same thing as Montreal.
Yes.
You know what? I'm going to say it'll be done in 4. So it'll be 3-1 for Florida.
Ooh.
I like Florida better. So yeah, I'll take Florida. I like what they've done. I like how they're built. I like Huberdeau and the fact that he's like the most underrated superstar in the league. Barkov, phenomenal center. Their defense core is, still holding it up there. And then Bobrovsky's going to have an opportunity to show why he's worth $10 million. So I'll go with Florida in 4 games. We'll go with Carolina and the New York Rangers.
Well,
what do y'all got?
Yeah, the bunch of jerks, I'm going with the Carolina Hurricanes. I really – I'm a big fan of when they started doing the surges and everything about them. Of course, Justin Williams coming back. And I don't know, the Carolina Hurricanes have been a team that have really impressed me in the past couple of years. And what a way. I mean, not only do you look at this year, but we can't forget what they did, of course, in Toronto with the emergency goaltender situation. But if there's an underdog story, I'm going with Carolina this year, maybe all the way to the Final Four.
Well, looks like we're head-to-head again, Spence, because I'm going with the Rangers in 5. I just think that when it comes to these playoffs, there's going to be a lot more grinding, digging games out, 1-goal games, stuff like that. Not everyone's going to have their full legs, and I think it's going to be a lot tighter hockey. And with the 3-headed monster in net for the Rangers, one guy has a bad game, he's done. They've got that flexibility, and I just think, there's no fans to surge for, Spence. Nothing for the Hurricanes. No one for the Hurricanes to please. Rangers, 5 games.
Well, I'll go with I love it. Episode 1, you never know what to expect. No, I'm kidding. But it's obvious that Spencer and Gina are polar opposites, which is exactly what we want on this show. Otherwise, it'd be pretty darn boring, folks. So I do find Gina and I think alike, though, in some ways. I got to tell you. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with the Rangers as well. I don't have a huge scouting report on them, other than my gut feel before each of you answered yours. Was just the Rangers are sneaky, and I just feel like they were on the bubble for being a wild card team, but they were making a push near the end of the season. Certainly pushing the Canadiens down further, pushing other teams aside, and they were right there and deserved to be in this format. So I'll see Panarin lighten it up maybe. Lundqvist, be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to how, like Gina said, how all the goaltenders factor into the series. So I don't know what it is. Like I said, I don't have. I'm not going to hide my ignorance. I don't have a ton of knowledge about the depth of this team just yet. But I will say that my sports gut tells me the Rangers are going to. I'm gonna say the Rangers in 4. So. We'll give 1 to Carolina, but that's it. I don't know. It's a bold prediction, but that's what I'm going to go with. So, all right, guys, we'll switch over to the West. We'll try to fire through these as fast as we can. Took a good little while to get through the East, but I think, what is it? Other than Spencer, I guess. No, you guys both your teams are in the West anyways. Okay, well, here we go. Let's go right to Spencer. Let's go with Calgary and Winnipeg. Wild guess who you're going to pick for this series.
Well, as a Flames fan, it's really hard to go against the Flames, but I am going against the Flames. I mean, you look at the NHL scoring, and the Flames are 23rd in the NHL this year in scoring. Only one team in the playoffs, this 2014 playoff, below them, and that is the Montreal Canadiens at 24. But the Jets scare me offensively. They always have all year. Their power play is deadly. The Flames just have not been able to put up scoring all year long. And I think this drought is not going to help them in any way unless Johnny Gaudreau and, of course, Chucky come back guns blazing and they find a way to put up 3 or 4 each game. I can't see this happening. I have the Jets winning in 4.
Well, I almost want to take Calgary now.
Because.
No, I mean, we see Winnipeg a lot during the season, and, Connor Hellebuck, a lot of people are saying, he should win the Vezina. Winnipeg, I mean, they had their troubles. They basically turned over their whole decor. But you're right, Spence. They're scoring with Scheifele and Wheeler and Connor and Laine and just keep going down the depth. Calgary made a fool of himself in the playoff last year, and I think they do again this year. Johnny Hockey, Chucky, they'll come play the 3 games and go home. Jets sweep.
Sweep. Man, I was sweeping my driveway today. Just throwing that out there. I don't know why I'm saying that, but I am.
Running out of things.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, we're just redoing the driveway. So we have all the time in the world lately to do it. And in hot weather. Okay, so next series, we got Edmonton and Chicago. I love the series. I think a lot of folks will. A lot of eyeballs are going to be on this series. So, Spencer, take it away.
I am going with Edmonton. Very similar reason to the Jets. I love their scoring. I love Draisaitl. I love McDavid. I love their speed up front. I mean, Gina and I are arguing about this a little bit off air, talking about this might be the series to watch, and I just don't see Chicago matching up with Edmonton. I really don't. I'm taking Edmonton, and I will say in 4 games.
Yeah, we did talk about this, Spence, and I'm sticking to my guns here. You just know there's 2 teams, as Andrew mentioned earlier, Montreal, Chicago, 2 teams that have no business being there, no business playing in the playoffs, and someone's going to win. And Chicago is going to beat Edmonton. Edmonton will, make their run for the number 1 pick, what they do best, not playoff hockey. I got to go with the Hawks in 5. Patty Kane, Johnny T. May not go any further than that, but they got it under them. They got the experience. Hawks in 5.
I haven't had enough time to mull this over, so I'm going to pass. No, I'm just kidding. Man, this is a toughie, my friends. It is, but it isn't, because I feel like the Oilers are just the heavy favorite. But, Chicago with their playoff experience, I mean, like the Rangers, I don't know, even though the Rangers recently don't have a ton of playoff experience, something sneaky. You're just looking for those sneaky teams, right? It's hard to bet against McDavid and Draisaitl. This is a tough one, fellas, but I bet you know what? Here's why I'm going to go with Edmonton. I'll tell you why. Because I had the opportunity to draft in my most recent hockey pool. I had the opportunity to draft McDavid. I didn't. I went with, oh my gosh, Tampa Bay, help me out. Kucherov. I went with Kucherov again, or I went with Kucherov because he got, the most points last year. Just had an amazing, ridiculous year. And I didn't pick McDavid, which was a big mistake this year because he's kicking my freaking butt in the pool. So I'm gonna go with Edmonton. I will say Chicago will put up a good fight, and I'll say Edmonton in 5. So 3-2. Rolling along 2, and we're going through this nicely here now. So Vancouver and Minnesota. Who do y'all got?
A big nap. This is going to be a terrible, boring series, I think. Minnesota doesn't impress me. There's nothing about Minnesota I like. They got rid of Boudreaux. Stinks. I hate Minnesota now, even more so. So I got to go Vancouver, 3 games. The young kids will come to play, and see you later, Wild. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, I can agree with you, Jeter, on this one. And I was going to start it off by saying I don't really have any ties or, really desire to watch much of this series. But if I had to pick, I would say the Canadian team and the Vancouver Canucks. A couple of shining stars on that team, of course. I think they have the better goaltender in net as well. I would say Vancouver, but I'm going to say in 4 games. Yeah, 4 games, not going 5. Just 4 for Vancouver.
Well, it'd be pretty darn boring if I just went with Vancouver as well, right, guys? I mean,
you could flip a coin. You could really flip a coin on any one of these.
No, you know what? Minnesota does have some playoff experience in recent years. I don't love their team really. I really like what Vancouver's doing. Love the way they're building their team right now. I'll go with an upset here. I'll go with Minnesota because no one's going to give them a chance. So I'll take them in 5, 3-2 for the Minnesota Wilds. Should be the North Stars still, but whatever, Dallas. No. Okay, so let's go with Nashville and Phoenix. What's the interest in this series? Who y'all got for that?
Throwing a retro with Phoenix. I am going with the Yotes. I'm going Arizona. I'm bringing it. John Chaika, I think, has done a great job. The St. Catharines or Lincoln. Lincoln or Jordan, John Chaika, a Niagara region guy, has done a great job with the Yotes and one of the youngest GMs, of course, in NHL history. I am taking Arizona. He will beat Ben Vanderklok's Nashville Predators in 5 games. Oh,
Yes.
Jeter's thinking. He's
yes,
thinking.
I agree. I'm thinking to change my pick because I like going against you because I know your track record with picks and bets. But
Yeah.
I also like Arizona here. They've got the goaltending. If Kemper can come back hot, they got so much speed up front. Their decor with Ekman Larson. I don't know. Nashville's got the playoff experience from that cup run a couple seasons ago, and they got Pekka and net who, could, especially a 5-game series, could steal it himself. But there's just something about this Coyotes team and Phil Hot Dog Kessel that I love. Taylor Hall can come back firing. I don't know. Something about Arizona. I love them. I love them here. Arizona, but I'm going 5 games as well.
Well, it's a contract couple of months for Taylor Hall, right? So he's got a contract to play for in this format, so it means a lot to him. But I don't know. I'm really I'm not convinced that Arizona, by the way, not Phoenix. Yes. I'm not convinced that they're going to just take this Lion down. So I'm going to go with Nashville at the upset. I'll take them for 3-2. And that is it for our preliminary, or what do you want to, or the
play-in
round. Thank you guys. I need you. I need your help, guys. Okay, so we're gonna go right into the seeding. So we're gonna go to the top 4 seeds from each conference. We don't know who they're gonna play, so we're all aware of that. In terms of discussion, let's see here. I'll throw it out to you guys. So let's go with the Eastern Conference first. We got Boston, Tampa, Washington, and Philly. All right. So of those 4 teams, we know they're going to be playing in the official playoff round. Some people call the prelims the the fake round or whatever, something like that. I heard Steve Dangle talking about it recently. But who do you guys think won't advance out of those top 4 seeded teams?
Well, in the East, I mean, I have my 2 favorites in the East, and it's Boston and it's Washington. I really think Pastrnak is, driving these Boston Bruins this year, and what he's done is absolutely incredible. And of course, I'm never going to go against Ovechkin, Backstrom, and Holtby, the Washington Capitals team. I really like Carter Hart. I really like the Philadelphia Flyers. I don't think they will impress us in this their 4-team round robin, and I don't think they're going to do well. So in the East, I'm going with the Flyers, the team that is not going to go far, and that'll be my bottom. They'll finish 4th in the 1 through 4 round robin format.
Yeah, I'm torn here because I like Philly to make a run, like I was saying earlier, with that grinding hockey and Carter Hart between the pipes. And then I just think they probably finish 4th out of the round robin against those other 3 teams, which sets them up for a matchup with Pittsburgh most likely. And with Pittsburgh healthy, I just see them going on a run again. So I'm going to have to go with Philly being that one team that doesn't make it out of the conference quarterfinals.
Yeah, it's tough not to have Philly as the pick. So that's why I'll make it more difficult for this next session here, guys. So I'll say Philly will be the first out of those 4 that's gone. They're at the bottom of the top 4 there. But now we have to pick one team out of the next 3. Which of those 3, if possible? I mean, they could all advance according to the way the format is right now, right? So let's just look long term then, all right, guys. So let's look at Boston, Tampa, Washington. Which of those teams do you see going all the way, and which of those teams do you not?
I personally think the team that's going all the way this year will be the Boston Bruins. I think their offense is just absolutely deadly. What they did this year, I mean, they didn't have 10 losses until, I don't know the exact date, but got to be close to Christmas time. And with Pastrnak healthy and Marchand, Chara on the point, even though he's still going, Chara's got to be 43 now, 42 years old, still playing. And he still looks in decent shape for the Boston Bruins on the point. I'm taking Boston going all the way this year. Do they win the Cup? Maybe, maybe not. But out of the 4 teams in the East, Boston deserves that number 1 spot, and I think they're going to go all the way.
Yeah, when you look at the round robin, I don't know if I see them finishing first at the end of the round robin, but I could see Boston making a run. But I don't know. There's still something in my head saying that Tampa's going to learn from that disaster against Columbus last year, and that maybe they'll prove me wrong, and it'll be more of a running gun with the Kucherovs and the little guys, Palat, Johnson. And I think Tampa Bay could, out of those other 3 teams, Tampa could be the one to make it the furthest. I still don't like any of those 4 teams to make it to the Cup, but I could see Tampa being the team Pittsburgh plays in the conference final.
I like it. I like the prediction, my friends. Yeah, this is a toughie. So, yeah, the Tampa was really catching my eye quite a bit looking at this. So they're looking at some serious salary cap issues going forward. Even though, as we all expect, the salary cap will remain where it's at. I don't know if it's possible for it to go down because of COVID, but I would expect it wouldn't if we're going to be returning to play, because they're going to bring some revenue in with that, with the TV deals, etc. So, long story short, with Tampa potentially having to lose some key pieces to the salary cap era that we're in, I'm going to see Tampa going all the way. I don't really have a ton of confidence behind that. I'm just going to go with it, just because sometimes you go against your gut and then you end up being wrong. So I'm going to say Tampa's going to go all the way. I don't think Boston's going to go. Washington, I think, will make a good little push. We already talked about Philly being dropped out. So, yeah, this is just down to these 3 teams here. But, yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. So I'm going to say Tampa's going to go. And then we'll switch right over here to the West, guys. So here we go with St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas Golden Knights, Dallas Stars. Who do you guys have as the first team not going forward out of the round robin?
Well, I'll start, and I know, Gina, you're not going to say the Blues, of course. I'm not saying the Blues either. I think it'll be a glorious run for them. No pun intended there. But I can't say anything negative about the Colorado Avalanche. I think with McKinnon and Rantanen and Landeskog, those three right there speak for themselves. I would have to say the Dallas Stars are going to be the team, in my opinion, that don't advance. I'm not going against Flower and net for the Vegas Golden Knights and what Vegas has done to the NHL and what they've brought in the energy level. I think that team itself is, a gift right there and a prize worth noting, the Vegas Golden Knights. However, Vegas is way better at home, and with the atmosphere in Vegas, this will be a lot different if they don't play in Vegas. Obviously, no real home game for any teams. How they'll adapt to that and how they'll play without, the huge crowds and the wild entertainment going on at their home games. But I love Marc-Andre Fleury and net for Vegas. I just don't see Dallas, knocking off one of my top three there. So I'll say Dallas doesn't advance.
Yeah, I agree, Spence. I mean, Dallas probably should have beat us in Game 7 last year, to be honest. Couple breaks went our way, and we pulled it off, Patrick Maroon style. But, yeah, when you look at those other three teams, I just think Dallas is the clear oddball out. I mean, Ben Bishop can be a stud between the pipes, as we've seen in the playoffs last year. Guys like Sagan and Ben can score, but I just don't see them knocking off, especially in a 7-game series, any of those top three.
All right, so the consensus is Dallas is out. Okay, next. So we're gonna go. And that's who my pick is. So I'll just keep it short and sweet, boys. So I will say, part of me wants to say St. Louis is going back to the show, with or without fans. But Colorado, I mean, I think it's a bit too soon for Colorado. I think they're just right about there. But, man, you can't really discount Cale Makar, like the Calder Trophy basically winner this year. They got a pretty solid decor other than him, but also, who they have up front. They're like the Leafs, but they have better defense. So, man, I want to say I'm going to have Vegas. I did already say Dallas would be out, but we're going to jump right into the next phase here. I like Colorado and St. Louis moving on before Vegas. So if I'm going to have to pick one to go all the way, man, this is tough. This is tough, boys. I don't know. You might have to come back to me, guys. Honest to God.
I was going to say, I'll give you time. I know who I'm taking in the next two. I am going to eliminate the Vegas Golden Knights. I think, I'm attracted to them only because of Marc-Andre Fleury and their top line. Other than that, I don't see the depth they have competing with the St. Louis Blues, of course, the returning Cup champions, and the Colorado Avalanche. As you mentioned, Cale Makar. I didn't even mention him in my first roundabout when we talked about who was not going to move on. But I think Joe Sakic and the Avalanche have something to prove this year. And if I were to pick a team in the West to win it all, I would be taking the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, you make a good point, both of you, with Colorado. I don't buy their goaltending at all. I know they had injuries in net this season and stuff like that. They went out and added lots of depth with Donskoy and Nazem Kadri. Who's to say Kadri doesn't take a stupid suspension again and ruin that like he did for the Leafs? Twice, yeah. Vegas, same thing. And it's funny you say that, Spence, because that was in my head too. What is that team like without fans? I've personally been to a game there, and it's not like anything I've seen before. And who knows, that team's so hot and cold sometimes. They were on a good run. But I got to stick with the boys, St. Louis Blues, and I'm going to put it out there. St. Louis Blues repeat as Cup champs in 6 games over the Pittsburgh Penguins. You heard it here first.
I was waiting for you to say that.
Drop the podcast mic.
Can
you can't see it, folks, but he did it.
Jeter, can I ask, who are they beating?
He said Pittsburgh.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, they're going to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins and Sidney Crybaby in 6 games.
Oh, man, this is going to be this is like, what's funny is we're making predictions in the most unpredictable possible format that's ever existed.
Yeah, so, no game dates, times, no arenas yet, but we already have a Cup champion.
Yeah, we don't even know if the puck's going to drop. According to Brian Burke, we're still a while away, but that's fine. I mean, optimism is needed in these times. You know what? I'm just going to pick Colorado for fun, even though I have no friggin' clue. So I'm just going to say Colorado is going to go all the way. And what's funny is like these teams are still going to have to play the 8 teams that are in the preliminary rounds. So it's like all the teams we're picking, still have to play all these teams at some point. So it's just funny because we're looking at the top 8 teams and basically expecting one of them to go or on the east and west side. But anyways, that's how hard it is to predict. So that's what we're going to do for the time being. Okay. So
well, before we move on quickly, I just wanted to bring up, is it an advantage? Like I'll ask you guys, is it an advantage being a team that's, ranked 5 through 12, getting to play a series first, whereas you're 1 through 4 playing more of a tournament round robin style, where your third game may not mean anything if you're either 0-2 or 2-0? Does it change the way a coach or a management may look at their lineup going forward? And as a player, does it change how you head into the locker room knowing, you'll have more games to play? This game actually doesn't mean much.
I mean, personally, I think it's an advantage to those playing in the round robin, those top 4, just because it's so out of the ordinary what's going to be happening here. Like I said earlier, if we have daytime games and stuff like that, I mean, if you're 0-2 or 2-0 and you're not playing for much, that's a good time to see, your third and fourth line guys get a little more ice. And you see, like today, the Toronto Maple Leafs added OHL star Nick Robertson to their expanded playoff roster. There's a perfect opportunity for a kid like that to get in the lineup and, not obviously for the Leafs because they'll be playing in the series, but for any team to bring up a kid like that, throw him in, let him skate.
There's advantages and disadvantages, but I mean, I think it's just really hard to answer that question at this stage just because, with all the different situations in terms of roster status and, health and all that kind of stuff. But, Jeter brings up a really good point with the round robin teams. I mean, if they can take sort of a cautious approach to those games, they can still make good use of them and try to keep injuries to a bare minimum, if any at all. But, again, this whole entire format is so unpredictable that you're going to have to go with the hand that you're dealt, whether you're on the outside or the inside of the top 4. So, yeah, I mean, I think teams that are on the outside, like, your Chicago's, Montreal's, they don't deserve to be there, as it's been said. So they have absolutely zero to lose. They actually have more to lose by winning if you look at it because of the draft, lottery situation. So, but you're not going to convince guys to lose. You're never going to convince players to lose no matter what. So you got to give an advantage to a degree to the teams that wouldn't have been there if this whole COVID-19 thing didn't go down. So I think it honestly just depends. It's kind of a mental game, right? It's going to be who's like mental toughness is so huge in getting to the Stanley Cup. Gene can attest to seeing the Stanley Cup or to seeing the St. Louis Blues do it just last year. And I just watched their hour-long special on their run to the Cup. I watched Pittsburgh's and I watched Washington's. And I mean, there's so much mentally you have to overcome, and now even more so with this format where you have no control and you got to just take what the PA and the league go with. I mean, players do have a say, obviously, but that's a long-winded way of saying I have no freaking clue. It's hard to say, guys. I mean, who has the advantage, who has the disadvantage until we actually have things more set in stone with the round robins and how they're going to proceed with the brackets and et cetera. So I think we need a bit more information in terms of how it's all going to finally play out before we get to that. So really getting into next, one of our last little segments here before we close out episode 1 of Sportsnut Central. We're going to talk quickly about how this all affects next season. We mentioned the salary cap already. So we're looking at possibly a December, January start. There really, again, is no set date or even month right now, according to Gary Bettman, commissioner of the NHL. So how do you guys see this affecting next season?
Well, if we get going as soon as we can, and that as early as could be July 1st, who knows when the government gives the green light, they're going to try and get this in as soon as they can to try and, of course, play a full next season. We all know with the lockouts, and they've had a couple under Gary Bettman, and he doesn't want a lockout, and doesn't want any sort of, variation of the schedule for next year. But depending on how long this goes, I'm sure the NHLPA will put in something that they'd like a break for the teams that have played, of course. Will the season be shortened? I think so. I don't know by how much. Maybe they start in January and they play a normal 41-game season all the way to the end when they play a playoff format similar to the previous year's playoff format. I don't think this format will stick, of course. I don't see 24 teams getting in next year, especially with Seattle coming down the pipe. But next year is it's like what you said to the question before. We don't have the information probably to answer that question to the best of our knowledge. But if I had to make an educated guess, I would assume 2021 would be probably a half season with the format for playoffs returning back to how it was in 2019.
Yeah, see, Bettman, someone asked a question to Bettman on Tim and Sid last night after his press conference, and he said that they would find a way to play a full season even starting in December, January. So I don't think they want to go through the shortened season again. So if I had to guess, I'm thinking if we get going late July, you're looking probably end of September, October for playoffs to end, and starting back up December-ish. Try and squeeze some in before the Christmas break, and they'll find a way to play the full season. They're hoping this is a one-time thing. I agree. No, either way, I don't think we're going to see the 2014 playoff again. But, who knows? You could guess. You could ask anyone. You could ask Gary Bettman, and he's going to say, yep, for sure, we're going to play a full season. He doesn't know. Nobody knows right now. There could be a second wave, and we may not even get the rest of this one done. So my educated guess is December start, full season, normal playoffs next year, but time will tell.
Time will tell, indeed, that's for sure. I think the main thing here we can all gather is that we centered our first episode of this new podcast, Sportsnut Central, around the fact that the NHL is coming back, and that's the plan as of right now, if things all go well. So I love the idea, at least right here in the moment. I know we're talking about next season, but I will just say as we kind of wrap things up here, I just love the idea of summer hockey right now. I mean, just being in my shorts, whether I'm out somewhere, whether I'm at home, just the idea of July and August hockey, NHL hockey is just so foreign to everyone, including myself. So it's just exciting, I think, to look forward to this right now in terms of that. But as for next season, I mean, Bettman did say, like Gina mentioned, that this format is like a one-off thing. And they don't plan to use it again unless there's another kind of, emergency situation or pandemic. But yeah, so they're going to look at getting a full season out of 2021. The salary cap thing we already mentioned as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what I think is interesting is how free agency is going to look. The draft we're going to talk about, but free agency specifically, because the season is technically over right now, but we still got to go through the playoffs, right? The new playoff format. So we got to go through all that. And then, a brief off season in the fall, free agency squeezed in somewhere in there, and then going into another full season. So I think free agency is going to be interesting. So going into next season, I'm curious to see how the results of this format, this playoff format, will affect free agency, and if guys go on a good run, whether they want to stay, whether they want to go, like Taylor Hall, for example, who's arguably the number one potential free agent. Is he going to commit to staying in Arizona? Who knows? But yeah, in terms of next season, it's going to be weird to see. I think it would be pretty neat, though. I will say Gary Bettman throwing out there about the Winter Classic kind of opening the 2020-21 season. That would be pretty neat. It's like, all right, let's go back to like when hockey began, and that we played outside. So wouldn't it be neat to see the season start outside? I think that'd be a pretty good homage to the game. I think that'd be pretty neat to see.
With the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions St. Louis Blues dummying the Minnesota Wild to start us off.
Well, I can add to that, and I think it just proves to the outdoor game and how much they mean to people. And, a lot of people argue, are they worth it? All the money they put into them. They put them worth points. Is it fair to put these teams through that outdoor weather for points when teams are playing inside? But if they do that to have an open the 2020-2021 season, it gives it more meaning and I guess more value to the season. And it'll just put another feather in the cap of a supporter. I'm a huge supporter of outdoor games. Just their belonging and why they mean so much to the NHL and the players in it.
So thank you guys very much. Thank you to our listeners for sticking with us for this first episode. A little bit of a longer one, but I mean, again, we have hockey to talk about. So I think we can all be thankful for that. And we'll see you guys on episode 2 tomorrow. Stay tuned for Ryan Harrison, the Well and Jackfish. And we're going to talk about this podcast more in depth and the other sports that we'll be covering during this journey. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
Sportsnut Central. We're nuts about sports.